Jim Molitor,
Here.
Carol Langford, Len Titi, Bing Matt,
Present.
Ellie Bundy,
Present.
Martin Charlo,
Present.
Mike Dolson,
I'm here.
James Dale Senior.
Thank you. Jimmy, can I ask you to start us out in a prayer this morning, please?
We call on you today to join us. Join us today to guide us through the work we have to do for our people. Guide us in the right way. Ask you also to bless the children and the elders of our reservation, and ask you too to comfort the people that have lost members in their family. There's been a lot of them lately, and I just think that we need to comfort these people. It's just, I just ask you this in your name. Amen. Amen.
Lemnaps, Jimmy. We have our minutes from February 15th for you. And I think I would make a couple of notes for changes for Abby on page 3 of the copy I have. Peter Matt. It says Chairman McDonald wants assistance. It's Chairman McDonald said the tribes may need assistance with the bipartisan infrastructure law funding. And then the CSKT does not qualify for federal excise tax funding for federal excise tax funding, which is funding the state gets from sporting goods gear sales. And then this, cross that out with, there is proposed RAWA legislation. Which is another general fund source to finance Native American tribes and provides between 90 and 100 million for the tribes annually. CSKT may, instead of would, get between 200 and 500,000 for our wildlife and fisheries programs. There's a lot to cover there, so probably a little clarity to that one. Is there any other corrections?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead, Martin.
just wanted to clarify on page 2, where I'm talking about post and pole yard. Could I just make sure that I specify that it was Tony Cashola Jr. that I'm talking with? And the only other thing is I think that Brownsfield should just have be capitalized. Thank you.
Anita?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Abby, on where Anita Matt was on page 3 of 7, was interested in the farm bill, the 2023 farm bill. The Biden administration was going to look into packers, who's making most of the profit off of the beef industry. And then it went down a couple sentences. A lot of people sold out, so the inventory will be down. There's a producer meeting in Pablo March 2nd. And Peter would like to sit in on the producers meeting, and Anita will have Janet Campbell set up the meeting with the Zoom option. Thank you.
Jimmy?
On page 2 of 7, where I was talking about the sticking in Harley, it said, so where it says they would camp at the river, I meant just myself, I would camp at the river. I don't know about the rest of them. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Nita.
I would make the motion to approve the February 15th minutes with corrections.
Motion by Anita to approve the February 15th minutes with corrections. Is there a second? Second by Jennifer. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous? Okay, we have our draft agenda. We have one walk-in. And then I would love to be able to bring up a request from Missoula County for a field trip and solidify the date for that. And then also there's a request from the Secretary of Interior's office to look for appointments on her new tribal advisory committee. So if there's interest in that, we would like to be able to make our nomination for that. So I propose to add those two items for the agenda. Is there any other agenda items? Carol?
It was just a concern from a tribal member on a department, and so I just wanted to bring it up, probably closed.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would probably give an update in the open, but I would hope maybe I could do it after lunch.
Okay, we can do that. We'll add that to the after lunch agenda. Any other needs for the agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda for today with additions? Motion by Mike. Is there a second? Second by Anita. Need a further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. Ellie? Yep, gotcha. Unanimous. Okay, let's go directly to our agenda. And first up is walk-ins. Sonny boy, come on up. How you doing this morning? I know. Know the feeling. You have for us today, Sonny?
Well, it was, would you mind if I do this? To do with, when you were, I think it was Tuesday, the 15th, when you were talking about the Dixon agency. Well, you kind of filled a couple voids from questions I've always had in my mind, is like what connection Joe had with Dixon. And then when you said that you lived at the agency and you could remember the beauty of it and stuff. So what year was that you came back?
1967.
Okay, that was like the year that we moved to Dixon and we stayed down where David Galliano stays before we moved out to the agency. But yeah, I tried to, before the demise of the blue building, Anita knows that I tried to save the blue building, and I was trying to get them to view the agency as a historical site and an intricate part of our history. And to no avail, because the blue building got destroyed. But anyway, there's probably some things you don't know that will be a problem for you. Because what I figured the reason is there is no development down there at all is because there is too much to be done. And what I mean by that is it's like a hidden secret that nobody wants to talk about. And it's like those houses, and I believe that they were made in 1914. And the houses contain asbestos. Because there's asbestos in my mother's house, Hazel Barnaby's. That would be the old, where did you live at when you moved to the agency?
Right next door to where Martin Barnaby is today.
In that little tiny one then, that
It was the second one in
on the right.
as you're going in.
Yeah, that was okay. I was wondering who stayed there before, like,
Sachs lived across the street from us.
yeah, well, and then they moved farther down. But anyway, I was just kind of curious because, yeah, and because with the shortage of home sites and all that, and what I remembered, like you said, the beauty of the place and how well maintained it was and all that. Well, I was trying to give my mother some relief because she had realized how, you know, how the place was withering away and dying, and it was starting to look like a Tim Burton movie scenery. So I would mow the lawns in front of the jailhouse and where the dispatch, and then up to the flagpole, because, you know, I wanted her to have something to look forward to because she would have to go to dialysis and then come back and see that. So I'd mow there. Then Larry would mow on the riverfront from like where Fred Hool lived up to where Victor Charlo stays now. That was the Arnold Dupuy house when I was growing up. And I trimmed up a lot of trees there and made a slash pile, burned it there, weed eated on the side, because I don't know if any of you are even aware, like on the bank side over the edge, you know, and I weed eated that. What they did to reinforce the wall there, it looks like they like put river rock up there. Kind of looks like how the road is, like when you go from Perma to Camas Prairie, how you look on the side, how they stack rocks to make the road, basically the same thing. And when it's cleared off pretty good, these flowers always come in. I don't know what kind of flowers they are, daffodils or something like that, orchids or something that looks that way. But anyway, because as I watched the places, you know, like go down and never did figure out why they never did try to redevelop those homes as for home sites for the future, you know, because there was lack of home sites and stuff. And asbestos is the only thing I could think of that's stopping it. And that's what I figured it would be, like a mathematical problem and where to dispose of the remnants of these old places. You know, you just go in with a backhoe and dig out a new square, take out all the old stuff, but where would you put it? Because you can't really tell how much asbestos was in each and every one of those houses, you know, that, and to dispose of it, to take care of it is costly. And then I don't even know if you really get to dispose of it to be done with it, because somewhere along the line I'd heard that when you bring that in, and it's like they tag it and bag it, it's kind of like a bank account. And if they decide they're not going to be anymore, then you have to come and get your stuff and figure out where else you're going to put it. But yeah, and I remember, like when Jim was talking, I remembered those stick games that they used to have down by Baptist and Katie's house. My dad, when he would get out of prison and stuff, he would stay there. And that's like where I first met Chuck Tillier and Rosie and all of them and stuff like that. And my dad would take me out there and he would say, well, this is where they had stick games, you know, and my Uncle John at one time told me that he believed that his brother he was older, he was like murdered for money that he had won there. He was found on the railroad tracks and stuff. But yeah, I tried to get him to reinstall a street lamp that was in between my mom's house and what I would call Mackie McClure's first house. There's just a pole there now, and I tried to see if they could get like Mission Valley Power to come down with their bucket and, you know, tree trim and training or something, you know, that's something they could have done. You know, and then a lot of people think that that little irrigation ditch that runs down the alley behind my mom's house and Victor's house is a gutter. And I said, no, that's an irrigation canal. I said that's what they used to flood irrigate the campus. That's what they called it, the campuses there. Because when you go along, you'll see where they had the gates for opening the gates to floodgate it there. And then there's a few water spigot spouts, whatever, which hook your garden hose up to. Because I used to have took a great big old black rubber hose up there because I was working the youth programs then and stuff. And I was trying to, because like when I look at things that I'm trying to solve a problem, I have to go back to the very beginning and work up to where I'm at and see where the problem developed and stuff. Well, the problem developed is when the main offices for the tribe moved here, you know, before this one was even done. And it was like they abandoned it because, like I said, there was a lot of stuff that was from the offices was down in the dump by that landing you guys are talking about. That's where the dump for the agency was and stuff like that. And I just would try to figure out like where could you know, and that's where the mathematical part came in, is how many cubic feet you'd have to dig out from where these previous houses were to get beyond their foundations and stuff, load it in a dump truck and maybe bring it down into the fields, like where Chop Saw Willie Hawkins used to work when the post yard was down there. Those old concrete things are still there somewhere. You could, like, after you figured out how much dirt and stuff you would have to remove, that would be how big your hole had to be to fit the stuff. And then, you know, you could line the hole with membrane like they're required to do for gas stations in case their tanks leak, because that's what happened to George's gas station next to Harvest Food. That's why it's abandoned. It's a brown dirt area, they call it, I guess. And from the tanks that he had there leaked, and that's why it's kind of basically abandoned, is because nobody wants to go in and dig all that contaminated soil out and then dispose of it and refill it and stuff. But yeah, that is like what I believe the problem is, and why they don't want to get involved with it, is because the places contain asbestos. And from the main office heading up to where Satch and them lived at the end of that block where Katie Coffey stayed, the house that just burned down. Well, the house that was, because when I first moved out there, the house next to the main office was occupied by Liz Brown, and then it was Francis Vandenberg, and then Roy Johnson, and that house was removed. Vicky Morzo got that one, and then Satch and Sylvia stayed there. Then across the street where Kenny and Nadine are now, Howard Edwards stayed there. He was like BIA guy. Because when the BIA and stuff moved out, what a lot of people don't know is the BIA moved to Ronan, and that's where Ronan Ace Hardware is now. And that's when the tribe was like taking over the BIA spots down there when it became our headquarters there. And then, you know, then like I said, as it decayed and went away, and it's just like, you know, it's just like they want to look at it as an eyesore and a waste of time, and law enforcement doesn't even want to go down there. And that's why it is the way it is, you know. And because I was trying to say that you could start by, you know, like rebuilding the old main office and the dispatch, so you could have like what it was intended for the people from Camas Prairie and Hot Springs, you know, because it was more centrally located than Jocko. And you could have a southern office down there, you know, and you could rebuild the dispatch office, you know, and you could have like officers in the area to respond to the immediate area of Dixon or whatever, you know, or watch the agency or whatever, you know, put some kind of hall monitor in, you know. But that was, and, you know, and to bring back the, what I called was the Eagle Nest, that was where Two Eagle originated at as the beginning of the Dixon Alternative School that Jerry Slater then started, which I got to be a part of, and part of naming Two Eagle. And that was, it was a pretty good building, you know. It was like divided into quarters. When you'd come in the front, it would go the hallway straight to the back, and there was like a back screen porch there. And then it would go north to south too. And when we got there, then like teachers like Pat McMurray, the boy from New York City, him and Richard Eggert would be sitting out in the hall playing chess, smoking pipes. And, you know, it had a basement, and upstairs was where Tony Sandoval had his little art, what you call it. And then, you know, I just found out he just passed away last July.
Hey, Sonny, can I, don't want to interrupt you, but, because you love to research. Is there do you have any information then on any of the buildings that would be historic, things that we would nominate? Like the old jail's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's why I figured that probably they wouldn't stay it, because like I was trying to get them to classify the whole place as, you know, like Dixon Stores on the historical list, you know, and that was in 1912. And what I was trying to do is I was trying to get the blueprints, you know, the blueprints that they had probably designed while they were still at Jocko for the layout of the agency, you know, because then you would know where all the, like I said, I don't know where the sprinkler pipes for the campus were and stuff like that. I just know that I realized where they were when I was working and had to move the sprinklers and stuff, because they had these big old sprinklers that looked like little tractors that moved themselves around after you hooked them up, and the hedges that surrounded that. It was really nice, you know. And that was the first time I ever had to trim hedges and stuff, and you know, I've painted all the fire plugs that blue that my mom would see on the way home, because they all just had old paint on them. So I had a bunch of paint that blue paint that I was painting my Barracuda with, the spray can, and I just painted the fire plugs blue, and was wondering why they couldn't put the street light back up, because it was like on the front street by her house and it's been removed, and why they couldn't come down with Mission Valley, train them on trimming trees down there, because there's branches that were falling, you know, and you got kids running around there. They could fall at any time.
I guess, Sonny, you know, we got some momentum going, and you're adding to that momentum in your discussion with us this morning. So I'm going to compliment you on that. So I guess when I'm hearing, you know, this just reminds me it reminds me of what a beautiful place it was, and how so many of those, it is a historic site. You know, it's the revamping of the agency after moving it from Jocko. And so it was quite a facility. So, you know, just to have those photos or get an archive and try to restore certain parts of that beautiful landscape would be, you know, and that could be displayed in the community building we have right now there. But I could see a whole kind of a cool thing for what you're bringing up.
If they could do it in 1914, I'm sure they could do it now. But like I said, to start with would be to rebuild the main office, and then like where the dispatch and where the courtroom used to be for the tribal judges, that. And then perhaps the blue building again, because, you know, that's like where I used to see Mack and McClure. They had forestry and stuff in there, and it was like a garage and stuff. And then where the post and pole yard was, I don't know if you remember, they used to call it Boydsburg, and I don't know if John Boyd had something to do with it. He used to live next to Sonny Morjo, and that house is gone too. That house,
Carol?
Yes, I wanted to invite you to a lunch today, if you would like to come. We're discussing this very issue, and it's going to be right back in the back room here, and we're gonna provide pizza.
Okay, and then like allude to what Martin stated about Dixon. Well, in the 5th and 6th grade, we were taught about Dixon because it was Keith Cable. He was our 5th and 6th grade teacher and my grade school basketball coach and stuff. And he put a name to Dixon, the first name. I just didn't, I just thought Dixon was Dixon, And then he explained who Joseph Dixon was, and he didn't, go into the details of it, but he was just telling us that Dixon was named after Joseph Dixon and stuff. And I did a little research after that in the school library there, but being at a young age, I wasn't comprehending the actions of what Joseph Dixon did, which was, it was like a termination, a termination of our reservation, much like Public Law 280 is, because that's from termination. That's a termination bill too. And that's, that was what I was trying to get to, but then nobody wanted to try to help research to get the blueprints to the place, because that's where you have to start. And that's where they started, was they discussed it in Jocko or whatever, then they developed a plan, then they developed the blueprints after they selected the area that they were going to build the agency. And my name for what I wanted to call it was the Flathead Nation Agency of the Flathead Reservation, established in 1914 here, whatever. And I was imagining like a profile of a live buffalo, and in the middle by his heart and stuff would be like a skull of a buffalo, like you see on a lot of things, to signify the strength while he's alive and the spirituality that they represent. Because I never did like calling it Dixon Agency after I researched later and figured out who Joseph Dixon actually was. So that's why I came up with the Flathead Nation Agency,
Anita,
the Flathead Reservation.
yeah, once you find out who Joe Dixon is, it's like,
Yeah.
Anita.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Sunny, for coming in. It's been a project that I've envisioned for years, is to try to clean it up, and that's kind of what we're trying to do. I don't think we want to take any other buildings down. I think that we're looking at maybe refacing, painting and trimming. And I had Mission Valley Power, I had John go down and look at some of the trees, but they do need trimmed. We just need a little tender loving care down there. And I think if we engage the community, because they want it too.
Yeah.
And I just thought that, and Carol and I had been talking about a cleanup as a kind of a pilot project, get the people engaged in the community and kind of make it look like it used to be. I mean, we can't create all of the buildings that used to be there. The only thing there is the jail. And
Yeah.
then there's a building back toward the river that Two Eagle used as a storage. But the other buildings have been already taken out.
Yeah, and then like I said, what it was called when Bud was the director, Bud Barnaby, it was a community action program, the CAP building, and that's where, like I said, that's what I called the Eagle's Nest, for Two Eagle, because that's where we came from, and that's where Jerry Slater and them never did give up on us, regardless of what happened, and he instilled that we could build a school with paper squares. And I looked at him and I said, "You're gonna have to elaborate a little bit to me." And he said, "Right now, what we are is to educate you to where you can get your GEDs." And he said, "Every GED you get, that is the cornerstone of Two Eagle here." Because at one time, before they moved the agency up here, there was a place that was back by where those stick games by Baptist and Katie's place was. They were going to move Two Eagle back there. And I never did go back there and look. I heard that they had already went back there and capped the well and stuff like that. They were planning on going to move there from out of the agency and stuff.
Just
I
to
don't know.
follow up, Mr. Chair, the
Yeah, go
other
ahead.
thing, we do have a roads project that's slated for this year to go in and redo the roads. They're running a little bit behind, but it was supposed to have been started in 21, but I'm sure that they're working on it this year. And we were just looking at that, trying to just clean the place up and give it a facelift, mow. And it's gonna be volunteer work, we're hoping to involve different departments and recovery groups in the churches, the people who live there. You're more than welcome. I really appreciate you coming in and giving us history, because that's what we want. And the other thing we talked about is possibly renaming it. Not the agency, but.
But yeah, that was my goal, was to rebuild the whole place, where all the houses, the previous houses are that were destroyed and stuff, but to start with the main office, and then you could utilize the main office to be like a southern office to offices here, where you're running out of office space here with people. You're either gonna have to build some more other buildings or start making cubicles smaller, to accommodate more people. But I figured that if you could do the main building and the dispatch building that they used to have, to kind of, have a southern point for law and order to be in the immediate area, to where law enforcement's presence are there and felt, because it's kind of like a zone that Sanders County, they have limited sources, so it's way on the eastern end of Sanders County. So to try to get county support, county police to come down to Dixon, if they had somebody in Thompson Falls, it's going to be an hour and a half, 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever it takes them to get there from whatever they're doing at the time, something when they're being requested to come down here. And I figured if you could get the main building, that dispatch, work on rebuilding the blue building for like a maintenance, you could have the maintenance you have here, for like maintaining the campuses and stuff like that. And possibly like rebuilding the gymnasium, because that's where they would hold the stick games after they left the woods over by Katie and them. And that would be like in November, they would be holding those stick games down at the agency gym. Sonny Morzo had a boxing club out of there. Growing up, I played basketball with the trustees, and then people from Mission and Arley would come down. We'd have to, for teams, first 5 from the top of the key to make it, you're on that team, next 5, whatever. So that's why I would be there every day of my basketball time that I could get in there. I would have to hide in there sometimes during council meetings and.
Now I know why you were so good at basketball.
Yeah,
That's why I liked you. Now I know.
because I would just stand at half court and shoot them like free throws. And
Sonny,
being smaller than the adults.
would you be able to come back at lunch and
What time would that be?
right at noon?
At noon?
Yeah.
Yeah, but like I said, that was my name that I had chosen over calling it the Dixon Agency, was the Flathead Nation, because that's who we are. A lot of people don't realize that is actually who we are, is the Flathead Nation. And that's why I just said Flathead Nation, Agency of the Flathead Reservation. And that was, like I said, my vision was a side profile of a living buffalo, and then a skull, like after they're, you see skulls everywhere, to be on his side by where his heart would be, kind of.
That's pretty neat. So we have to move on with our agenda, Sonny, but I'm gonna check into the asbestos. I know that they did tear down one of the buildings. I'll have to review that with Lance.
Well,
and then
you could review it with credit too, because
yeah,
what the Roy Johnson house, the one that was next to Katie's where Satch and them lived, Well, Vicky Morzo moved that to Herrick Road in Charlotte. And I believe that Tribal Credit, after Vicky sold it, had it. And that house is no longer there. I didn't go over to see if it was burned down or if somebody picked it up, moved it somewhere else, because it's like a tribal house and stuff.
Yeah, some houses, you just have to stabilize the asbestos. Depends on what it's used in the siding or the type of
I don't know.
tile, or if it's floor tiling. It's just if it's loose, then that's what you need to stabilize it.
And like I said, I don't know if it was getting foreclosed on or whatever. And, knowing about it was an agency house and that it did probably contain asbestos, you'd have to disclose that to somebody who was going to take it on.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And like I said, there's still asbestos around the heating ducts in my mom's house. That's visual and stuff. And
That's typically the remediation that you need to deal with is pipe insulation, that type of stuff, because it becomes loose. So anyway, Sonny, I don't mean to
no, that's all
push you
right.
away,
I
but
just,
yeah,
it was kind of something on my back burner because I couldn't, like I said,
Yeah.
get the blueprints of the place. And then when I heard you guys discussing it the other day, it's like, there's a little flicker of hope for the agency yet. And maybe one day it could be totally rebuilt to everywhere. And then I know one thing that nobody's gonna like to do is I would like to remove all those modern, because I would say that was the worst crop Sonny Morzo ever grew, because where all those little HUD houses or housings are behind where Sonny Morzo stayed. It's like take them out and rebuild some houses that look like the rest of the houses at the agency, because it's like, like retro, everything old is now new again. You could take a 57 Chevy, put modern drivetrain in and stuff, and you still retain the classic car, but it's updated and stuff like that.
okay, another good idea. Yeah, share those with us at lunch, and we'll move on our agenda.
All right.
Sonny. Thank you. Yeah. Oh wait, Bing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sonny, you forgot to mention Arnie Dupuy and Sam Claremont too, that lived there too, in that street there, that by the old tribal building.
What was that now?
Sam Claremont and Arnie Dupuy.
Oh, yeah, I know, like where I said where Howard Edwards stayed,
Yeah.
just directly east of that is where Sam Claremont stayed, and then on the end where you were, Jane Claremont and Stephen stayed there before they moved up here. I remember all the houses there, and Judy Abel lived there, and all these other people that I've watched throughout the years.
Ray Booker and Ben Gallegos, they used to live there too. They were worked for lands down there.
Yeah, because where Martin stays, that's where Pierre Canteau stayed. And like I said, then the house you're talking about, Sam Claremont's house, John Morzo had taken that and moved it down to where that's John Morzo's house out there in the field there. But that was an agency house. That was where Sam stayed, and then later Mackie McClure moved over there. And I always liked Mackie because he would just make us hold our dog, because our dogs would find porcupines. You can't even find porcupines around there no more, hardly, but he would have us hold our dogs, and he'd be pulling out the porcupines and porcupine quills and just telling the dogs, well, we'll see you again when you're stupid enough to do this again. And they would do it again. Slow learners.
Some of us all are.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sonny. Thanks for coming in.
All right. Well, anyway, thanks for bringing up the thought of saving part of our history.
You bet. Thank you.
That's why I just came in, because it's fresh in my mind. I don't even know where I got an envelope that has stuff that I was starting on, but that was where I got stalled at, was getting the blueprints to the agency. Because like I said, you have to start where they started at with the blueprints before the buildings came out.
All right.
So you know where all the plumbing and everything goes.
Thanks, Sonny.
All right. Thank you for your time.
You bet.
All right. See you at lunch. All right.
So
All right.
real quickly on your calendars, we have, it's been delayed numerous times, but field trip request by Missoula County to go over and to the review our conservation easement. And they want to award us and the nonprofit agency an award. So that's tentatively scheduled for May 10th, which is a council day. So that would replace a council agenda if council would want to go and do that. It's far enough in advance that Jennifer can plan for it. It's been delayed a couple of times, so it's always nice to go over there. There's many things we can talk about actually when we're over there that resource staff would be probably able to talk about. So is that does council concur with that date? And that would be our agenda for the day.
Where's the conservation area?
It's right in the heart of the Swan. It's just right there by just a little bit north of Sealy Lake. Yeah. Okay. The other one was quickly is a new advisory committee that Department of Interior Secretary Deb Haaland is doing, and they're looking for nominations. I didn't know if there was any council reps from here that might be interested in that. Go ahead, Carol.
Mr. Chair, is that the TTAC? What's the acronym?
It's STAC,
Yes. I think-
Secretary's Tribal Advisory Committee.
Yeah, I'm interested.
I would be interested in that.
Okay, so we could nominate two. Or I don't know if we just need to do one. I don't know the protocol on it.
Maybe an alternate.
Have do them both and see what happens. Okay, we'll work that up for
Can I
go ahead,
better-
Carol.
I better say something. I did send something in saying that I was interested because of my association with the subcommittee with the Tribal Leaders Council, and they were looking to fill all those boards. And that one, I thought I was interested, so I sent a notice in to them. So apologize, I should have brought it up in front of council first before sending it. It wasn't official, it was just saying I was interested.
No problem, Carol. So the deadline's May 9th, so we'll take care of that and we'll have backup for both you and Anita.
So Carol, was that like the health board for the Rocky Mountain tribal leaders? It had something to do with health. Yeah.
Okay, we'll work on that. So then, Carol, you had one item for executive? Okay. Okay. Okay, we'll do it later then. So next on our agenda is forestry.
Let's see here. Yeah, good morning, members of council. Thank you for your time. I am here today to request acceptance by motion of the high bid for the BFS tractor sale. So on Monday, we had the bid. We had two bidders. The high bid is Dupuy Logging, the apparent high bidder. He had $11.80 per ton for Ponderosa pine. He bid $39.60 for Douglas fir, Western larch, and others. And that total value with TSI and Rhodes was $842,753.60. The other bidder was Three More Enterprise.
Go ahead, Len.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. So I was just sitting here thinking about the pulp material. Is there opportunity for us to purchase that for firewood rather than allowing them to sell it as pulp? I mean, would they make more, would the contractor make more money that way?
So I think they might. I don't know if Tony's up. He might be able to speak more on that. Pulpwood is optional on this. Half of this sale is a lot of that burnt stuff, so that doesn't do as good for pulpwood anyways. But I'm sure that would be an option. Like I said, the removal of it is optional, so I don't know if if they're gonna be taking all that pulpwood or not.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, so it could be an option, Len. That's something we could look into once we start logging, and if we see an excess of firewood on the ground in the units. You know, some direction we've received is to put that firewood down by the landing if we have it hauled in. And then sometimes when we have excess, we do bring it in and work a deal out with the elder program to where we can haul it in. But that's something we can look into. It's something that we've built into our contracts as a line item, just in case the council requests that, where we have a firewood rate to where we could pay the logger to bring that firewood down to a point if as directed by council.
All right, thank you, Tony.
Any other questions for Patrick? Carol?
I'll make a motion that we approve the high bid on the BFS tractor logging unit to Dewey Logging.
Motion by Carol, second by Bing for approval of the high bid for the BFS tractor logging unit. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Martin, out of the room.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I'm on and I'm in favor.
Okay. Thanks, Martin.
All right, Lumlum Council, and apparently we need to work on our naming so it's not such a tongue twister.
Too many
Yeah.
acronyms.
Yeah, we live by them at forestry, you know that. Thank you. Have a good day, guys.
Yeah, that one's on me. Thank you, council.
Lemlum. Okay, John, Don. Gentlemen, how's it going?
We're here to seek approval for a contract to on our building protections for the extensive remodel on the old complex, which is long overdue. We have some bricks falling off the south end, and it's due. The bid is $437,750, but we did a cost assessment earlier and we come out higher. That was during the COVID. We were over 500,000 the first time. So it's come down a little bit, which is nice to see. And we're just looking for approval of that today.
Question.
Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, John, is this for the whole thing?
Just the 2-story, actually.
Oh, okay, because what are you gonna do
And,
about the rest?
And
I
the
mean, you
mansard all the way,
you
right?
can't leave the rest looking the way it is.
The mansard in the roof the whole way up to the chief of police law and order there.
Thank you.
Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John, I see in your requirements here that the contractor will provide technical specifications for the roof system included in the proposal, but I didn't see that included.
For the roof system, okay. That is, it's a Conklin roof system where they coat the existing roof because there's no real big tears in it. Yeah, they coat it, they put a fabric down, and then they recoat it. I can get them specs for council shortly.
Any other questions? Yes, entertain a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we authorize the high bid. Is that what it is?
Low bid.
Low bid. for the complex project.
Is there a second? Second by Anita. Any further discussion? Go
Was
ahead.
there more than one bidder?
No, there wasn't. There was only one bidder, but,
Okay.
another person did show up for the walkthrough,
That's all I needed to know.
which
Thank
helped
you.
keep the price down.
All those in favor? Okay, looks like we have a unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Please feel free to have more people do those walkthroughs with you. Okay, we take a 2-minute break. Okay, we'll get going again. We have, of course, our esteemed guests here and first of all, I have to, state my condolences for the Bobcats and that loss and, losing a quarterback is tough to take. It really is, I share anybody's pain that MSU didn't make the national championship, but they were there. They had the chance. So I'd get that out of the way. So, good morning. Yes, what do you have for us today?
All right, good morning, everybody. I just wanted to bring my coworkers and myself in and introduce us for the new year, give you an update on programming that we have accomplished in the last year, and then at the end, ask for your signature on a memorandum of understanding to continue our FERTEP work. So with that brief introduction, my name is Brenda Ritchie, and I am the Flathead Reservation FERTEP agent, federally recognized tribal extension program for Montana State University. I have lived here on the reservation for about 30 years. I am going into my 14th year with the extension office and going into my 4th year as the extension agent. Been doing lots, learning lots, and if we can have our slideshow, I wanted to introduce my team. Perfect. There's my thumbs up. No, go back one. There we go. A little bit more about myself. I am a diehard Bobcat fan. My oldest son, who is a Ronan High School graduate, so not only do they have my pocketbook, right? They also have my firstborn. He will be graduating in May with a degree in exercise sciences and going forward into a PA work. And so we're super proud of him. He will be taking a short, what mom is hoping will be a short sabbatical to join the Army. And as part of the ROTC program with MSU, he will be going into the Army in June as a 2nd lieutenant. So we are super proud of him. Mom wants him home. That's not what she's going to get. So I'm going to get my blue and gold pom-poms out and cheer him until he does come home. My youngest is a junior at Ronan High School and is the light of my life. He's my jokester and my playful heart. And I am grateful to have him be a part of my life. If you get to know him, those of you that are in Ronan, he's the tall one. So he comes in about 6'5". That's how people know him. And he is a sweetheart. And my husband and I are glad to be here and celebrate living in this community. So David, I'm going to let you go next if you want to do your talk button.
Hello, my name is David Myers, and I'm a site director for one of the grants that resides within Brenda's office. So it's been great having her as a mentor and helper for the last couple of years. We teach together in the schools the YAM curriculum that we'll talk more about in a minute. It's been my honor to live on these lands for the last 20 years. And I want to acknowledge that the place we live is a very special place. Some of you, or maybe all of you, might know me as the high school counselor at Ronan for 15 years. I felt more and more compelled that mental health awareness and stigma reduction and suicide prevention was my true heart. And so it was wonderful when I was able to move on to working for MSU on those sorts of issues. So again, I want to thank you for the chance to come and get reacquainted with most of you or newly acquainted with some of you. And I do have a gift from the students that I work with that I'd like to pass out later. But so thank you again for being here.
And I'm the newest recruit at Brenda's office. I just graduated from MSU this last spring with a degree in hospitality management and a focus on farm to table restaurant. So my heart, I grew up in this area and then left for about 14 years with my husband. He also grew up here. And we've always just felt called to come back home and serve this community that served us when we were young. And so we have a heart for people here and bringing local foods and food sovereignty issues to the front in this area. That's where my calling lies, I guess I'd say. But right now I get to work with Brenda and with Ginger specifically with the SNAP-Ed nutrition education program. They brought me on to do high school and adult classes in nutrition and education. And then we'll go into that a little bit in more detail later, but I'm thrilled to be here and be by Flathead Lake, which is my dream come true. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ginger Sling. I was born and raised here. I have 2 children. Some of you know Whitney Dans. She has presented through some of her programming here at the tribe. And my son Taylor. I am the SNAP-Ed person, so I get to teach youth, and that is my passion. I've been at this position for 16 years, and I love going into the schools, love working with the kids and trying to get them healthier.
I super appreciate it. If we can go to the next slide now. We're gonna briefly just review with you guys some of the projects that we have going on in the office. We'll talk more in depth about them later, but I wanted you guys to know that the FERTEP office is 100% grant funded. And so I am constantly going out when people come to the office and they say, we really wanna do this, we're super passionate about it. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll come play with you too, but we're gonna have to write a grant for it. And so these are just some examples of the grants that we have in place within the last 12 months. And it's quite a bit of work. I don't mind. I love seeing the outcomes of the projects that we've been able to do, and just wanted to bring to council's attention some of the work that we're doing. As we progress with our presentation today, we're going to highlight a few of those programs. Okay. Right. The first program we're going to highlight with you guys is our National Mentoring Program. We have had this program here on the Flathead Reservation for 11 years now, and started with myself as the director, and as currently has an open position, I am refilling that position along with my job as the FERTEP agent in order to keep the program going. We have youth groups in Ronan High School and Polson High School with mentees. Those are the mentors, come from the high schools, with mentees coming from Kay-Willie and Cherry Valley. We have 26 high schoolers in Ronan that are matched with 32 young people from Kay-Willie, Harvey, and they go over once a week, spend about an hour with those young people working on academics. So there's some tutoring components and social emotional development. We wrap that up. The teenagers themselves go to monthly trainings on leadership and working with the young people, and we work with them to address specific needs of the mentees as they come about. This year, part of our training has been Real Colors. I am a certified Real Colors instructor. And so there is a junior or a teen version of that training, and we offered that to our teenagers. And as a way of helping them begin to understand communication and interpersonal relationships. So the more we know about ourselves and how we're going to react or respond in a situation, then we can also begin to understand how someone else might react in a situation based on personalities. There is a science to this. Some people say it's all, pink fluff. It's not. We all have a personality, and they can be summarized by colors, which is the way this curriculum teaches that. Once a month, then, the teens implement an activity that has to do with their color. And so, for example, the 4 colors you can see there are blue, gold, orange, and green. I have those cards that we use with the teens here for council to see. This last month, the focus was blue, which is emotions-based. We respond emotionally. Blues need to know that you're taken care of, and then I'm okay. So if you're good, I'm good. And if you're not, then I need to work to figure out why. That's how a blue is going to respond to a situation. In short, there's a lot more to it, but in short. So what our blues decided to do this last month was they decided to read. So they had a literacy component, and they read. We bought the books. There's a book for every child in the program. And they chose to read Thanks to the Animals, which is written by a Passamaquoddy storyteller, Alan Soka Basin. I apologize if I'm saying his name wrong, and illustrated by Rebecca Ray. They read this about how the animals took care of the little boy that falls off the sled. And then the hands-on project that the Blue Group decided to do with the mentees at both schools was to create teacup bird feeders. So if we can flip to the next slide, here is up on the upper left there, you will be able to see that was the Blue Group standing up, or in that case, that's the orange group, standing up, and they have to articulate and get some public speaking experience and explaining how their group would react in a situation. And we do that training in the school library for Ronan, and then at the Polson Boys and Girls Club for the Polson students. The book, and then, so here you see them reading the book, and then the teen is helping them put their teacup saucer together. We made homemade suet, and then they packed those and were able to take those home and a give back to the animals. So the youth, it was, you know, you think as an adult, you go, oh, well, I would pick that color of teacup to go with that saucer. And, you know, those of us that need to be super organized and color coded. No, the youth really, you saw the personalities coming out, even in the little ones, and how they chose to put their teacup together. So me, I needed the teacup up and the teacup in the middle, right? They were flipping the saucer upside down and putting the teacup over here and sideways. So it was a lot of fun. And that was what our mentoring group and mentoring program is focused on this school year. And we'll continue to move forward. We were just awarded the next continuing year. It's an annual grant. We apply for it every year. And we did receive it for year 12. So we will move forward and continue with programming there. Currently in total, we have 87 youth involved in the reservation in this project. We can go to the next slide. And David, I'm gonna let you go from here, and I have a hard copy if you need something a little bit closer.
Well, as I said, I'm David Myers, site director. The branch of the Department of Agriculture we work under is the Children, Youth, and Families at Risk. And my program and the grant is a research grant, and it actually has a very key question that I don't believe has been answered. And we're looking to see if the youth can impact mental health awareness, stigma, and suicide reduction themselves. So I'm there to mentor the activities that occur under this grant and to guide them, but they are in charge. They are also the ones that have to organize things, learn how to get approvals for things, learn to make their projects realistic. So behind the scenes, I'm teaching them a lot of leadership skills. And that's already evident in the fact that we're now on to our second cohort, and definitely the older kids, the sophomores, see themselves as the leader of the group. And of course, I have to teach them how to do that gently with the incoming freshman cohort. And so melding that together has been a really interesting part of the work. But we also did a different part of the project, which was purely related to the community, where we did an online survey due to COVID. This was originally planned on paper. And we had over 350 respondents from the community. And it was a wide-ranging survey about their attitudes towards mental health and mental health services within the community, things like that. That's still being analyzed. That data resides with a grad student over in Montana State, but we will definitely be reporting to not only you, but somehow through community meetings to as much as a community as we can get to. And that'll be my responsibility, but the kids will be there with me to report on that data, because we're trying to establish a baseline within the communities. It was basically anybody in this valley up and down from Polson through Mission, and based on zip codes is how it was done. And then after all of our kids' activities for 3 years, we'll run that survey again and see if there are any differences, and we'll report what those differences were, what the impact was from our students' work. So within the school, it's called the T, and this was named by the students themselves, Teen Emotional Awareness. And primarily they have been interested in branding themselves, promoting themselves within the school, trying to become established as a thing, which is not that easy. They've done a lot of work on building promotional materials, posters, the buttons that we're going to give you. They have their own team sweatshirts, and they're wanting beanies this year. Is much more interesting than sweatshirts. So don't know what that's about, but they'll have their own beanies with our branding and labeling on it by the end of the month. I'm hoping they come in. And so the T has about 16. It's actually, I think, gone up to 20. We've had 4 recent ads in Ronan. They are either in 9th or 10th grade, and it's Ronan High School and St. Ignatius High School. It's tilted more towards females. So what happens is at the end of Brenda and I presenting YAM, Youth Aware of Mental Health, which did you mention?
I can't.
Okay, yeah, so it's one of the programs that we have where we go in for 5 different sessions. This is all approved by the school boards, and it's also got its own research project, so it's run through the SKC IRB as well. And we're there for 5 sessions, and it evolves from us discussing some facts about mental health, giving them the basics, to them leading role plays, which they enact or act out different types of scenarios that might be stressful or a crisis. And we talk about what their thoughts are about it, what they feel about it, and what they would do about it. And we discuss that, and what are their options, what different consequences happen as a result. Sometimes they decide to go down kind of a negative road with it, and we say, okay, well then what's the consequences? So that's the initial phase of what I do every year. And then from that, it's easy to identify the students that have a real affiliation or caring for mental health. Perhaps they have an uncle who's struggling, or they themselves do. It seems to attract kids who have those life experiences, and they want to be part of the club that I'm running that we've discussed, that is the T. And so naturally from that, do you want to go ahead and take that up there? That would be great. Okay. Oh, sorry. So that's who ends up in the group. People who really do care about this issue. And I'm going to be with those 9th graders from last year all the way through they graduate. So I'm hoping to see a lot of growth. We hope to take them to more leadership trainings, leadership camps in the summer, and even a national leadership convention. As they mature through the program, they'll be able to go do that with us. So far they've done a lot of outreach in schools, like positive messaging and thank you flowers to different teachers and workers in the school. They've disseminated some posters and stickers. They are about to do a big event in Ronan. There's a daytime volleyball tournament for the middle schoolers. And the whole event is wrapped around mental health and physical health and how those two things go together. So they're going to be there having set up a booth and be able to give a quick set of messaging to all the middle school students. So they're pretty excited about being at that and being the high schoolers that are trying to help the middle schoolers begin to understand something about mental health and stigma reduction and things like that. So we're looking forward to that. We are going to have the 2nd year of a summer reading series, and that's actually pictured in the bottom left on that slide. Some of you might recognize that student from St. Ignatius. Hopefully I got just the backs of all the little kids. But so that's an example of one of the things they do as outreach. Is they have a very nice curriculum of books that begins to introduce different ideas around mental health that is age appropriate and has been vetted by, like the principals have looked at this, and that's the books that they read. I think it was like twice a week during summer school. In Mission, we also had a similar program of aiding the Ronan Library in the summertime with their reading groups with kids. So that's just an example of them trying to reach out to the community. They definitely want to do more and more. That's kind of the point, is can we reach those same people with some messaging and help them understand mental health awareness more, and then they take that survey again at the end of the grant. So last summer, the leaders of the program got the Real Colors training, and they're very enthusiastic about passing that on to all of the members of the T, the new members. So we'll probably be doing Real Colors, like Brenda was saying, with all of them. But they also got to have some fun last summer. The few of them that came to a leadership training got to go rafting at the end of the program. So you can see that there. And they look like they're having a good time. I was not on the raft. So we're looking forward to more and more collaboration with community members and different tribal entities. I attend about 3 meetings, it seems like a month, of groups that now are interested in promoting mental health and wellness. And so that's been exciting to see that come about. I mean, I think if there is any positive thing about COVID, is that with all the increased worry about our kids and the isolation they've been through, there's been quite a good response from different groups trying to address that. And we want to be part of that response team too. Here's what? Oh, okay. Here, straight from the factory, little buttons that say you matter, and they're for everybody. If you like wearing them, if you don't want to wear them, hang them on your wall. But they just wanted to say thank you for your support and acknowledge that I was coming today. So that's from the kids. They use them, whenever they can in events and pass them out. I told them they can't pass them out to the middle schoolers because I don't want to arm all the middle schoolers with a pin, right? So thank you very much. I've got one on right here.
Thank you, David.
You
I don't
bet.
know if we want to arm our colleagues up here with the pen either, but we'll try it.
Okay. You got a little.
Yeah, we do. Used to have little spacer walls too, but.
Thank you, David. Our next presenter will be Ginger Pitts Lang, so we'll go to the next slide.
All right, so I am the SNAP Ed Educator. So SNAP Ed is the education arm of the food stamp, the SNAP program. Oh, thank you. And so I feel like I have the funnest job because I get to go into 1st, 3rd, and 5th grade classrooms and teach a series of 6 lessons to kids. It's based on the My Plate through USDA. Can you speak up to the phone there? Oh, you haven't heard them hear me? Sorry. So I get to go in and teach 1st, 3rd, and 5th grade students on the reservation about healthy eating through the My Plate and through the USDA. I love what I do. I feel like I have seen some really healthy changes. I had a little boy in 5th grade the other day told me that he took the information home, took the newsletter home and said, my dad threw out a case of pop and said, we're done with pop. That is the worst thing for our bodies. And so that was awesome for me to hear because he's right. And then I last year got to teach summer youth program at Boys and Girls Club. That program is called CHIFS, Choose Health, Food, Fun, Fitness. The difference in that one is it's a little more hands-on for the kids, and it's a little bit longer because they actually get to cook. So we cook together, and that was really fun. So that picture of the 2 little gals there are making their own healthy parfait with yogurt and granola and different fruits. I'm really excited that Havel's here now because I just didn't have time to reach all the kids. And so she's getting to go to places I wasn't able to go, and she's getting to reach teenagers. So that's pretty exciting. I have not had time to do many adult classes, and Hopple is going to be able to teach a lot more adult classes. But I was able to do an adult class at the Morningstar Apartments, and that was really cool. Stephen is doing a great job with those people, and he worked really hard to get the folks to the class. And then he ended up deciding he would take the class too and participate. And so I was able to give out 5 Instapots to the folks, and they don't have stoves or anything there. They just have microwaves. So that was really fun to do the Instapots, because then we practice using the saute function. So it would be more like a stovetop, so they could make something like a stovetop. And so that one picture is the bison stew that we made, but we made several other things like breakfast burritos and enchiladas and different things with a healthy perspective. And I felt like they got a lot out of it. And Stephen felt like it really drew them. They didn't know each other very well. And so that really drew those people together as a community, and they started having some more, community growth. So that was a really wonderful class, and I'm hoping to do some more there. And I usually get into transitional living, and that one hasn't worked this year. They wanted to do online, I wanted to do online, and because they weren't having people come in, and the folks there didn't have that capabilities for the online. So hopefully I'll get in there again too. And then through my job, we recruit to get classes. And so I got to go to farmers market and food banks and recruit and hand out sheets. So like at food banks, they might get a large supply of something like lentils. And so we have recipes and fact sheets to help people learn how to make things with things like lentil that they might get an extra supply of. So I love what I do. And I think, sorry guys, I think I have the funnest job.
Thank you, Ginger, so much. Just a short segue in regards to the Instapot program. Havel is going to address it a little more deeply. That was a concern that Stephen brought to my attention. He called me and asked if he could take the Master Gardener class, and he did. He came in, he and his staff member came in and completed the entire Master Gardener class series. And we got them 2 raised beds with full raised beds with season extenders. So each bed is around $475. And so we will be inputting those raised beds at the Morningstar Apartments this spring. I just talked with him this week. It's not quite the right time yet, but we're watching Montana weather, as it can be. And so throughout that conversation regarding gardening, we introduced him to the SNAP program. And at that time, Havila was not with us. So I introduced him to Ginger about perhaps doing some of those adult cooking classes. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. And the more we got to talking, then he explained to me that they don't have anything to cook on in those apartments. And so I said, well, is there a communal kitchen then? Thinking, well, there's got to be a kitchen. And at that point in time, the answer was no. And I said, well, yes, Ginger can come in and teach the classes, but how do we expect our participants to then repeat the process? They can't. So we came up with this idea of Instapots. We started with crock pots, but crock pots have a very narrow field of what they can do. And someone else in the office said, oh, what about Instapots? And I'm like, well, okay, let's look. And we wrote another grant. So we put together another grant that funded we have 2 grants for Instapots now. That first grant purchased us 30 Instapots. And so the team now has been able to implement those with adult ed in getting, once we do those cooking classes, now folks such as those at the Morningstar Apartments can repeat, do, reflect, and apply. We want you to use what we teach. And so hopefully that has made a difference in between gardening and the Instapots and cooking. We'll continue to work with the community and meet the needs as they are brought to our attention. The other reason the Instapots became important is I began to work with the Arlie CDC Center, and they explained to me that they were having difficulty when families come in to pick up their food baskets or their boxes and choose the foods they're going to pick. They are picking pre-cooked, pre-done, pre-canned things. And when asked why they weren't taking the dried beans, the dried rice, the dried staples that I would have grown up on with the dried goods, they said, 1, because we don't know how to cook them. Two, we don't have a place to cook them. I grew up, my mom always had a pot of beans on the wood stove, always. But if you don't have a wood stove and you don't have a stove, period, you can't cook a pot of beans, which can take up to 24 hours depending on how you process. So we're like, oh, well, let's write another grant for, more Instapots. And that is where I will turn it over to Havla and the work that she's doing, in particularly with the Instapots and our teenagers. Next slide.
Thanks, Brenda. Yeah, so Brenda is a powerhouse, and she went to work and did write those 2 different grants, and one of them is through No Kid Hungry. And No Kid Hungry wants to reach the youth in communities that are lacking access to healthy foods. And so we went ahead and wrote that grant, and then noticed that the prices went up on Instapots right after Christmas, and we're not going to be able to get as many as we were hoping to get. So I went ahead and emailed the Instant Pot company and said, hey, this is what we're doing. We want to get Instant Pots to youth who don't have access to healthy foods. And they said, yeah, we'll bring our price down and ship you as many Instant Pots as you need. So we just ordered 80 Instant Pots through No Kid Hungry, and those are shipped now. They're going to be here next week, hopefully. And I'm working, I taught in Arlee at the high school there, and they're trying to put in a food pantry at their high school for youth there who need it. And so it's really important to get them those skills and education on how to use those Instant Pots and how to eat healthy foods from those. And we're focusing on juniors and seniors in high school who are going to be out on their own soon. And Brenda wrote into the grant additional measuring cups and spoons and cutting boards, those kind of tools that people need starting out. So I was able to do that in Arlee. I'm in Ronan now, and we did classes in Mission, and I'm also in Two Eagle River School now. And so we're going to outfit those kids not only with those tools, but also the skills to cook and the nutrition information to cook healthy foods is our goal. So I'm super excited about that program. It's been great. I've been really, really well received in every school where I've taught, and I've just been so thankful for that warm welcome. And I think the Instant Pots have paved the way for that for sure. It's hard to say no to a free Instant Pot. So I'm super excited about that. I'm also really excited about working with adults in the community. I got to do a class at the Arlee CDC and had a few people who came and got Instant Pots and were excited to get to use them with foods. And they were really excited. Everybody that I've taught has been really excited to get to use venison and bison in their Instant Pots. We've talked about how to cook those meats that are sometimes harder to access and cook. So I'm excited about that aspect of it as well. And then I've also got to teach I've gotten to teach adults and teens, and I just finished up in Dayton teaching all their kindergarten through 6th grade. We got to do because they have combined classes, and that's been super fun to get to know those different communities. So thanks for that opportunity. I don't know, I guess here I brought a picture of my family so you can see them, and then in the other corner, and my husband also just graduated from MSU Bozeman. He got his degree in fine art and pottery ceramics. He'd like to work with those tools in the community here also. And then the other picture there is some Ronan teens who are learning how to cook with their Instant Pot. So that's what I've been doing. I've been excited to get to do it. And I'm really excited to work with the community in policy, systems, and environment work also to kind of set us up for success, like with those Instant Pots, teaching people in the bigger picture, how do we take these skills that we're learning and the nutrition facts that we have and apply them to our work and our lives and other aspects of community. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Havla. Havla's only been with us since October. August, end of August, okay. And just super, I know I've got a lot going on my mind. So super grateful to have her here. I'm sure my time has quickly dwindled here. I do want to share with you in regards to what I currently do in the office. As a single agent office on a reservation with the FERTEP program, when you're a single agent, you end up dabbling in all 4 areas of extension. Those areas are agriculture and natural resources, youth development, family consumer sciences, and community development. Here on this slide, I just plugged in a couple of things there. Those are programs that are active that I am currently doing through the FERTEP office as your extension agent. We're going to highlight just two of them. I'm glad to take questions about them in a few moments if that would be appropriate. The Drones and Ag program is a partnership that I developed. And for those of you that are Grizz fans, here is my kudos to you. This is a partnership with the U of M. We have a math professor from the university that comes up every other week and is working with us to develop a program at the Ronan Middle School after-school program about drones and ag. Due to some time constraints and me needing to fill in some other responsibilities, the Lands Department has been astronomically supportive of this program. And I'm going to invite Jackson to come up and tell you a little bit about that and what they're doing with the kiddos. Jackson meets with Fred, who is Fred Peck is the professor, and he and Fred have been running this program. I didn't know there was a mic over there.
Okay. As quick as yeah. We've been doing this program, it's an after school program, like Brenda said, me and Fred have, and it's been a great project so far. We've been started the basics with the youth. We teach them how to read the map, how to utilize the compass and a GPS unit. We're doing this to build them up to how a drone works and how we're going to using a drone to map. For us, we want to utilize it to map like our noxious weeds program out. So all the weeds in our site and everything like that. So let's see. We've been teaching them about noxious weeds and how rapid they can grow. We did a little game with them. I did a game with them, me and Fred did. We did 640 acres, northeast, southeast, all that, the quarter system. We took a ball of yarn, just threw it around and explained to them that that's how quick noxious weeds can travel. So, and trying to explain to them how it can devastate a piece of ground quickly. That's why it's important for us to map them out. Using the new age technology of a drone would benefit us quicker than out there on the ground, walking it, finding it, mapping it. So it's time consuming, but with the drone it'd be a lot quicker and easier. So, but it's been a lot of fun. When kids are loving it, they're excited about getting ready to fly the drones. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Jackson. I appreciate your time and your effort so much in helping lead out in that activity when I needed to take a step back. So Lands Department really has come through in support of that program, as well as all the other programming that we provide in the office. I could not do this without them. I believe in your Drones and Ag program, you have 15 youth?
Yes, 15
that are there. And we're looking at some summer programming and some other activities using drones that we hope the youth will become involved with. And as they grow, perhaps choose careers in that and come back home to the Lands Department and choose a career in agriculture and natural resources. So we'll continue to develop that. I wanted to wrap up today's presentation with our last project because, and we can go to the next slide, because I really feel like it encompasses everything that we have worked on. This last year, early spring of 2021, I was approached by a school counselor at Cherry Valley Elementary School, and they were really struggling. As we all know, the mental health crisis post-COVID is significant. We have data now that shows the increase in stress and crisis and traumas because of this. The counselor there approached me and said, what can we do? We're not allowed to go on field trips. We're not allowed to have the schools get together. The classrooms can't even commingle. We're completely segregated and separate. We are doing classes in person and virtually. And she's like, I'd like to raise chickens. And I said, okay. Now, bear in mind, I grew up vegan. I don't know anything about chickens, but I'm gonna find out for you. So what did we do? We wrote another grant, right? That's how we answer this. And I asked her if she had a chicken preference, and she wanted to do egg layers. And I said, yeah, but what happens when all the chickies get big and need to go somewhere else? And they didn't have a good answer for that. In regards to the food sovereignty projects that I've been working with here on the reservation with Lands Department and council members, I said, how would you feel about raising meat chickens? If our younger students at that academic, social, emotional development that they are at that point in their lives could be our egg watchers and our chick raisers, we could meet the need of bringing the outside agriculture world to these students, since there's no field trips, which is what, typically we take you on a field trip to a chicken farm and you could go see the eggs and the chickens. So that's what we did. We bought incubators. I purchased eggs online and those children were fascinated. Cherry Valley and Kay Willie came on board with that project and we had chickens and hatcheries and babysitting going on at both schools. Completely engaged children that really needed something to go right in their little world right now. And Cherry Valley had the ability to set up a 24/7 live camera feed. And we reached over 300 between the two schools. We reached over 300 youth of noses that we could primarily count, as well as families at home, as well as other reservations. We had a couple of homeschooled families on the Blackfeet Reservation because their schools were closed to in-person contact. And they were Zooming in for lessons with the chicks and readings with the chicks, or Zooming in with their families to watch the chicks. And I have to tell you, at that 21-day mark, when we're all waiting for the chickies to start hatching, the camera went down. This was a crisis of epic proportions for our kids. And the school principal at Cherry Valley was receiving phone calls from families, 9:30 p.m., that they were online trying to watch the chicks hatch with their children and no longer had visibility. I cannot give kudos enough to our teachers, our school admins and staffs reservation-wide for all that they have done for our youth in trying to make this work the last 2 years. That particular principal reached out to her IT department, who left their home, went back to the school, reset up the cameras so that families and their youth could engage in watching the chicks hatch. That is the whole purpose of becoming, or part of the purpose, I shouldn't say that's the whole purpose, but of creating interest in agriculture, of addressing food insecurity by giving the youngest of our community the power to change that, the power to become food sovereign. Now, am I telling our pre-K kiddos what's going to happen to those meat chickens? No, we're not, okay? But they're a part of that process of raising food for their community. And that's exactly what we did. When those chicks got too big to be, in the big barrels that we had at the schools, I went and collected them. Yes, the vegan gal went and collected the meat chickens and took them home to my house, into my husband's garage. He was a pretty good sport about it. I will tell you, the very first question he asked is, we put this horse trough in the garage with everything in it, and he goes, so do we have to eat the chickens? And I said, no, sweetheart, we don't have to eat the chickens. We just have to finish raising them. Community partnerships and collaborations came out of the woodwork to help support this. We started with our schools, with our families, with our youth. We moved into MSU extension and grant writing and support there. The Well-Connected Community Grant is the one that supported this. From there, I had members from the Elmo community that offered to come in and learn how to raise these chickens, with the idea of then what we want. Brenda doesn't need to take these chickies home every year. I want these to go home to the families to finish raising out. And so this was kind of that pilot program. We partnered up with the Mission West Co-op in Ronan, and they sent a wonderful gentleman out to my house bright and early one Tuesday morning, and we butchered chickens the old-fashioned way. It was quite the experience, but we did it. We had older youth and teens. So if we can go back to my Got Chicken page. There we go. So you can see here the setup. We had STEM, all kinds of hands-on manipulatives there with the chickies as they hatched. Students were writing journals at the school while they had them about that process. And then we brought them home. Amy Vaughn, who is the director of the Boys and Girls Clubs, used to commercially raise chickens and let us borrow one of her chicken tractors so that we didn't have to find the money for that piece. I brought this big old chicken tractor out to my house and we finished raising those chickens. Here you'll see we invited older youth where we could explain the concept of what was going to happen with these chickens. My son and his girlfriend also helped participate. And one of the first things that the younger children said to me, they said, "We've never seen a real chicken. How can we expect in the future to be food secure and food sovereign when our children don't know where food comes from?" And so here you'll see one young man with my KC is petting a chicken. He was so excited, he pet a real chicken. And then he walked with that chicken through the final phase of what that gift was from the chicken. The butcher that we had came out, did a beautiful job of explaining the life and death process. Prayers were said, words were said. Dana Hewen-Korn, who was there with, these are her grandchildren, offered the cultural component of, this is what we do. There's hunting and there's gathering. And when we go and we harvest elk or bison or deer, we're harvesting a chicken now. And the sacredness of life and the gift that the chicken was giving to us. It really completed a full circle of what agriculture and food sovereignty and addressing food security comes down to. So with that, I felt like that was a really positive way to finish up. Some of the verbal feedback and comments I've already been reached by the schools asking if we're doing this again. Family members, my understanding from Blackfeet, are calling to ask if we're doing the chicken project again. And we will be. One of the most impactful outcomes of that project, other than all the things that we can all pick up out of it, was something that none of us as the adults involved anticipated. We saw a huge increase in attendance in school. We had no idea attendance would even be a factor in this project. One story that was shared really quickly, a couple of months prior to the eggs arriving at one of the schools, a kindergartner had lost his mom and had almost zero attendance since that traumatic event. Once the chicks got there, he had almost perfect attendance. The importance of having these extracurriculars, of having agriculture in the classroom, I cannot express enough of why we have to do that. As important and to growing into the grown-ups we need them to be as academics is, academics didn't necessarily get that kiddo back in the classroom. An ag project with chickens did. And so the funding and the support for continued efforts such as this is just really, really important to support our schools and teachers in what they're trying to do every single day. And it was my honor and my pleasure to be a part of that. With that, that does conclude my presentation. I'm sorry, I know we ran over. I apologize, Council. Did any of you have any questions that I could take? And real short, I hope that my comment about academics was seen as how I meant it. It is absolutely critically important, but so are the extracurriculars that we seem so quick to take out of our school systems. So.
Thank you, Brenda. Anita.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Brenda and David and Ginger and Avila. Glad to meet you. I'm glad you're on the team. I've got a couple questions. Number one, I didn't hear too much about 4-H. I know at one time, I know you're working an awful lot with the youth, but within the schools. So I just wanted to know how it's going with the current 4-H groups, if it's reservation wide, if you're, having participation. That's one of my questions.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for the question. MSU, any youth project or any youth activity is considered 4-H. Because we are grant funded, I have to meet specific grant objectives. And so I don't get that real traditional 4-H look. where we have a specific club and they meet once a month and they do specific activities. We've approached it from a non-traditional 4-H viewpoint, and all of the youth that are involved in these programs are reported as 4-H. So for example, the mentoring project, that is a 4-H project. It is funded by the 4-H National Mentoring Program. Those teens and the mentors and the mentees are all considered 4-H members. Youth that would become involved in the chicken project, that's considered a 4-H project.
Okay, with that, have you ever been contacted by Two Eagle in providing some of these educational and mentoring and?
I have not been contacted by them. I have reached out to them multiple times through the years that I have been at the office. Communication is a challenge with getting a response. I am tickled and over the moon that Havilah has been able to work with them and collaborate and hopefully, bring the food resource and the Instapot program to them. In years past, we had a gardening program, and years ago, we also attempted to have a sci-fi program there, as well as have offered multiple other opportunities that at that point in time, perhaps were just not a good fit for them.
Okay, thank you. And going on with that, I see that the Native American Agricultural Fund, you've gotten a grant from them for the youth component, and I understand that, and I very much encourage that. It starts from youth, up, but the ITLF, the Indian Land Tenure Foundation, I was wondering what the deliveries were for that, what it included the.
So we've had multiple projects with the Indian Land Tenure Foundation, or the ILTF. One of them was the ripple mapping program. And so we just completed that this last spring. And so I now have that ripple map, and I'm working with MSU and the Native American Agriculture Fund and ILTF in what do I do with it? It's a great big picture with really teeny tiny print, like you can hardly read it. So I haven't been able to figure out what do I take that information and how do I disseminate that out into the community, and or how do I change programming or move forward, keep the programming and continue to use that. So it is in the process with that ripple mapping. Other programs that we've done with the ILTF funds has been the Grow It Till You Make It project. That was a gardening and food preservation project that we did. COVID kind of put a damper on things as we were just getting that rolling. It also supplied almost $10,000 towards starting the 4-H apiary project. The apiary, we still have the bees, we have all the equipment. I'm partnering with the FFA director, Casey Lunsford, in moving that program forward now that we're coming out of COVID, we hope. I'm hoping to be able to establish more activity around the bees, but large chunks of those funds were dedicated to getting the supports and supplies to hopefully create a sustainable project and not having to, nickel and dime it from year to year.
Okay, and to continue with the producers, I know with education's been a problem because of all the COVID and everything being shut down, and you haven't been able to do a face-to-face. I hope at some time we can get our meetings going again with producers and looking at education, like even bookkeeping, simple tax things. Maybe get veterinarians in to talk about herd health and some of the vaccines available, to assist them. And that was one of the comments there. And hopefully one of these days we can get back into that and have Lance help us get something going. The last thing that I wanted to say is I hope that we're looking, and Mark and them are in here as well, for youth to become involved with the IAC, the Intertribal Ag, that delegate that we need so badly here. We don't have many Flathead residents. I believe the Marks girl was the last one who attended. Now I've actually only attended virtually for 2 years because of this COVID, but they still have that youth component. And I'd very much like to see that we get somebody recommended from here this year and try to get them involved in that youth group. And, you know, things are all paid. All they got to do is, you know, if they're interested in that, getting it paid, they put in their report and they get selected. I mean, it's something that's pretty simple, but their essay is what I was trying to think of. But I would very much like someone's support this year in appointing a youth. from somewhere.
Absolutely. And I appreciate those comments, and we will continue to strive for that as well. I came on as the agent in March of 2019 and then went right into COVID. And so have not had the ability to obviously have that in-person experience to take a youth to IAC. I do understand there is the online piece. With some of our teenagers, I have attempted several online options, and I think everyone's just kind of burnt out being online. So it has been a challenge to find teens willing to put that effort into it for very valid reasons. My hope in partnering with Mr. Lunsford as the FFA director is that we can start to build a collaboration between 4-H and my office and Casey, Mr. Lunsford, and FFA, and have more opportunities for our Native youth to participate in IAC. Between the chicken project and the bee apiary, and then he has the cattle and the horse and the goats and the sheep and some of that. Be able to put a group together to participate in that, in the youth IAC piece. I do for our producers, I do a twice a year packet. I meet every month either over the phone or via email, once in a while in person, COVID depending, with the lands department as my advisory council. And I seek their guidance and their advice. So we do send out producer packets twice a year. Some of you may have received, I hope received a packet. If you're on that list in January 1st of February. I have some additional calendars here that I wanted to give to council as well that went out to the producers. And that has been our way of, since we couldn't have meetings, what information, what educational resources that I could print and put in a packet to send out to our producers was how I tried to address the lack of those in-person and virtual meetings. So I will leave these here for you guys too.
Just one follow-up, IAC's technical assistance individual that was selected was Zane Not Afraid. And I don't know if you or Lance has heard from him, but he was, I think, come on September, October, it seemed like, and he is out of the Crow, I believe. But I would like to, you know, get a hold of him, I don't know, as a group or something, and also have him come in and start doing outreach. Not only to the adults, but to the youth. They got that youth loan, and, you know, there's a lot of opportunity out there for kids who want to get started. And poultry is agriculture, right? You know, sheep are agriculture, pigs, you know. But anyway, I would really appreciate that. We could get together somehow, even if we did it, you know, by Zoom, and got to know him and had him make a plan to come out here and meet with people, because I don't see it being used. The youth loans aren't being used right now, and there's not much education.
Okay.
So
what was his last name?
Zane Not Afraid. I can actually text you his info as well.
Perfect. I was just writing a note.
Yeah. All right. Thank
No,
you.
I'm glad to, as always, I will do my best, and hopefully we can get some teens that are willing to commit. That has really been a challenge to get our teens right now to commit to most things. With that was my final request for an approval of a memorandum of understanding. And I think, and a letter of support, and Mark is here to support me in that.
Yes, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, that's all I was going to bring up, is that right now that MSU Extension is in their renewal phase of this grant period for the 4 years. It starts next this July.
September 1st.
Oh, September
Yeah.
1st. And then it'll run for 4 years through 26. We are right now in the process of finishing up the MOA stages with contracts or grants to get that down for chairman's signature. And the other one would be Tribal Lands Department was just going to inform council and get approval to do a letter of support from our department as their advisors for MSU extension, just for the grant opportunities. And since we've had FERTEP on the Flathead Indian Reservation for 20 plus years, I believe, 23 years. So we want to continue this work with them moving on into the future.
Thank you, Mark. I believe we have the MOU in our packet, and I think it's in a final form, correctly. So, and you're okay with it, obviously. So, yeah, I would entertain a motion to approve the MOU with the MSU Extension Office for the Flathead Reservation.
I would make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Anita, second by Jimmy. All those in favor? Show of hands. Like we have a unanimous. Carol out of the room. Thank you. Just, really appreciate your work, and the Instapot stuff was fantastic. Wow, what a great way to introduce people into healthy foods. Did you tell them to throw their microwaves away? Anyway, what a great program. Just when Sonny was in here this morning, just a bit of trivia history for everybody, in case you didn't know, the 5 acres or whatever, the 5.5 acres in Ronan that the county fairgrounds sit on, and the community center that the JC's built, was given to the county by the tribal council. It was tribal land for 4-H. That was the main purpose. That was what that tribe was dedicated for. Yes. So, bit of history. So thank you. Great presentation. Thank you. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks, council.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have legal. And it's executive? No, not executive. Open session?
I think it can be open session. Yeah, I think.
Okay, we'll stay in open session. Go ahead, Chelsea.
Great. Good morning, Hess Quext, and I'm here today where it says legal on the agenda, but we're actually here to talk with you about the research or the reservation or research review board. We had to take out one of the R's, so we didn't have 3 R's, but the reservation research review board to review research that either is happening on the reservation or involving tribal members. And just before I get started, there's a number of us here, and so maybe we could just, I think pretty much everyone. We have Vernon Finley from Kootenai Culture Committee. We have Mike Durglow from Preservation. We have Thompson Smith from the Says Khalees Bay Culture Committee. And then we have Nikki Graham from University of Montana, who is also serves as a community member on the SKC IRB. And we also have Stacy Sherwin, who runs or heads up the SKC IRB, even though she retired officially last summer, but she's so committed to the IRB work. She's still doing that. And so we are, it's been a while since we've touched base with council on this issue. And for some of you, it might be the first time, maybe even that you're hearing about it. So just before we get started, we had a couple of items in your packet that I think started on page 35, but I just want to sort of set the scene and give you the background. Even for those who have heard about this, it's been a little bit of a while since we've talked with you. So I'll do that, and then I'm going to turn it over to the rest of the group to talk about our recommendations for moving forward on this.
Chelsea, Dr. Myers in that previous presentation referenced the human study that was authorized and okayed by the the college, probably Stacy, through that process. So, yeah, thank you.
Great. That, yeah, nice to have a real example of what we're talking about here right before this happened. So perfect. Well, so the reason this working group, we've become the research review board working group, came together. We started meeting at the end of 2019. And at that time, council asked us to look into some changes in federal regulations regarding research review at any IRB. And for those of you who maybe you're aware, but the IRB is an institutional review board. There's many of them, probably maybe even thousands, Stacy would know, but most colleges have them and there are other ones. And these IRBs review human subject research, so research involving human subjects, to make sure that that research happens in an ethical way. And it's sort of required by federal regulation. And so the changes to those federal regulations would have allowed someone who wanted to do research on the reservation or involving tribal members to get approval from any IRB anywhere. And then they would have been authorized, or at least in compliance with federal regulations, to come do the research on the Flathead Reservation, totally without, they could have done it without our knowledge at all, unless tribes passed a law requiring otherwise. And so the working group did put together a temporary ordinance requiring any research proposed to happen on the reservation or involving tribal members to go through the SKC IRB first. So that was to ensure that, someone couldn't just get approval in, I don't know, New York and then come do research on the reservation without our knowledge. As part of that, we also developed an interim process for reviewing research. And that briefly is that because SKC IRB is a functioning board and has the sort of setup to handle it, they act as intake for the research. So that's Stacy, and then she sends out to the CSKT departments research projects that come through, and those departments give feedback and either approve or don't approve. If they approve, then for human subject research, the SKC IRB reviews for compliance with federal regulations. So that's sort of what's happening right now, a brief sketch of it. The working group, in addition to that, we wanted to set up this interim process because to deal with things, but we thought as a group that the best idea would be actually to create our own, for CSKT to have their own research review board. And so we decided not to create our own IRB. We thought it made sense to leave the review for compliance with federal regulations with SKC IRB because that they're functioning very well and we didn't see a need to take that on, but we thought it would make sense to have our own research review board that reviewed all research, not just human subject research, but all research. I guess I should put an asterisk by all, because I think we expect that there's some minor projects or student projects or things that would be exempted, but all significant research involving human and non-human subjects that would occur on the reservation or involve tribal members would be first reviewed by this CSKT research review board. And that was our recommendation that we've shared, I think, before with council. But since that time, since you passed the temporary ordinance and we came up with the interim process, we've been working on a permanent ordinance, which starts on page 39 of your packet. And we're not going to go over that in detail today, but it just, if you are interested, you can look through it and see what it would look like. And we've been thinking through about how to set up a board and things like that. The major thing that we've sort of recognized is that we think we need a staff person, either someone at least half-time or maybe even full-time to coordinate this board and to begin the process of developing a research code, which are the policies and procedures for reviewing research, and and doing some other things as well. And that's, I think, what we're going to talk with you about today. I did just want to note that we did speak with Rick Ennis and Clayton Matt, and they asked us to put together a justification for this, which you'll see begins on page 35 of your packet, which is really an explanation of the benefits we think that someone serving in this role could provide to the tribes. And I think that's what we'd like to talk with you about today. And if there aren't any questions, or I'm happy to take questions, or I can, if there aren't any after that basic overview, I'd like to turn it over to Nikki and Stacy to essentially describe some of the problems with the current process. And also, of course, at any time, if, the people who are actually doing the review for CSKT are also welcome to jump in and explain some of the challenges that you are facing with research review. So,
any questions for Chelsea on her summary? If not, we'll just go ahead, Nikki.
Good morning, everybody. So my part of today is just to kind of explain some of the struggles that we have come across. When we work with IRBs, the IRB is really about human subjects research and conducting it in an ethical manner. And one of the things that we have found as an SKC IRB member is that sometimes research that comes through, we wonder if in fact it's actually approved. Is this something that our tribe wants? Is this something that is of interest to our community? So what, Stacy, I'm gonna pass it, I've got dogs going bonkers. I'm gonna pass it off to you for a second while I run them outside. So hold on, I'll be back. But Stacy, if you wouldn't mind just going through some of the current struggles that we've had, and then I'll be right back.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning. As Chelsea and Nikki stated, the IRB is really an organization at the college that was set up about 15 years ago to review research according to the federal regulations embodied in the Common Rule. That's required for federal grants, state grants. A lot of different entities require that an IRB review those before the research can be approved by the granting entity. And in addition, we review student projects and projects that come in from off the reservation to make sure that they meet ethical considerations as outlined in the Common Rule. Some of the challenges have been, as council approved Ordinance 110A a few years ago and said all research needed to come through the SKC IRB, the SKC IRB is not set up to review non-human research, like research into natural resources. We don't know what to do with that. It's nothing that we have people with expertise in those areas on campus, but they don't sit on our IRB. There's no federal regulations related to that. I often send it back and say, that's not something we know how to review. So having an entity that would supervise those projects and say, yes, this is something that should be done. I should back up a minute and say that oftentimes when I think about the difference between IRB and what this new group would be, the new group, the Research Review Board, would really look at whether the research should be done. It's something that people want done on the reservation. And the IRB looks at, is it being done ethically? Two very different functions. And so when I get research, I send it out and say, is this something you guys want done? If so, it comes back and we review it. The exception being exempt studies. When we met with council, there's a category of studies that are exempt studies. Examples of those would be a student here at the college who wants to interview two adults about something that isn't sensitive to cultural intellectual property rights. Maybe they want to interview them about what they eat for dinner or something. We don't send those out. Everything else goes out. So that is one challenge. Who reviews non-human subject research? And there's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of even outside researchers who want to come in and look at things on the lake, for example. So that is one challenge. And the second challenge is having a defined group of, from my perspective, a second challenge is having a defined group of people who meet regularly and are charged with approval of research to say, yes, this is something that we agree with and that we want done on the reservation, or no, this is not appropriate to have done here, or nothing that we consider a priority for research. The last component that the group of folks here have been meeting to talk about is developing a list of research priorities that researchers both on and off the reservation could work from in terms of determining some areas that the tribes think would be helpful in understanding more. So I'm going to hand it back to Nick.
Thank you, Stacy. Sorry about that. Of course, it only happens right when you get on Zoom, right? Additionally to what Stacy has spoken about, we have, I think from a personal standpoint, as a tribal member, as a community member, as a person that's participated in various research projects, our situation here on our reservation has opened gates where things are happening and we are not necessarily aware of what's really going on, and we don't have a thumb on our researchers and a way of following through with our researchers to make sure that the information comes back, it's shared back, or that we actually know what was found within the research projects. And so the review board and the person that would take on this responsibility would help us maintain some sort of records in that regard. Whether it's human or non-human research, we just don't know what's really occurring on our reservation. And I have come across multiple researchers who say that, oh yeah, we're up in Polson, or we've been talking with Elmo, and when I look at my list of what I've seen through IRB, that they're not even on the list. And so it's one of those things that I feel like as a tribe, we have the right to say, yes, we want this research. No, we don't. Is this good research? Is this research that's going to be helpful, or to whose benefit? Because many times, at least in my experience, the university folks that I've worked with, they write these grants and they say they're going to do research on the reservations, but many times they don't even have permission from a reservation to do that research. So this is a way that we could build that capacity and hold people accountable so things don't happen without our knowledge and without our understanding. I think that's all I have for the struggles that we're having right now. Are there any questions that council would like to ask of us at this point?
Any questions?
Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Nikki and group, thank you. I just want to acknowledge, the work and putting this together. At first, I really didn't understand the importance of it, but now, as a council member for a long time, I've watched stuff come in and not really realizing who's kind of controlling or taking control of all the data that comes out of these, a lot of these things that they're doing. And so I just want to thank you for acknowledging and making sure that we're above board and, everybody's on the same page as possible, as much as possible as we can be. So thank you.
Jennifer?
Thank you, Chairman McDonald. I think it is a good idea for our tribes to have control over the kind of research that's being done on the reservation. And I think one of the biggest benefits is that we would have a place where people could go to find the studies and the results that have been done here. Because now someone might come in and out and we don't know how to use that data. And some of it I think could be really interesting. And as I was reading the documents that you sent, I also liked how you included a provision where maybe the tribes could ask researchers for information or about issues that they would like to see researched. I think that's a really good component too, because sometimes a department or a group might want something researched but not know how to begin. So I think it sets up a really good way to collaborate with people to get research done, because I know that it's expensive. So thank you.
Any other questions for Nikki or Stacy? Thompson.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of council, thanks for meeting with us on this important issue today. We have gone through, Chelsea, I don't know how many meetings it was over the last few years, but we've been hitting it, and I really appreciate your diligence on this, and the group as a whole. There are a couple things that I just wanted to flag for council that might be of interest. One is something that Nikki and Stacy mentioned that I think is a really healthy, unique aspect about this ordinance. And that is trying to take a more proactive stance towards research, not just being a receiving house for whatever it is people out there want to study about you, about this place, but to, in fact, establish a process where the community here can decide what studies you need, so that you set the agenda. I think that's a really great part of this. And the other is to call attention also to something that already exists. That's a unique part of the community here. That's a really great part. And that is the existence of the two culture committees and of a review process that's already in place that this would work with. It wouldn't supplant it. The elders would still be the ones to review and give their input on whether something from a cultural perspective is appropriate or not. And this would basically just better ensure that in fact that kind of review happens, that people don't kind of get around it in some way or another. And I don't know if Tony Senior or Vernon, if that kind of matches up with your understanding of this ordinance.
Yeah, Vernon, had his hand up next. So Vernon?
Yeah, oh, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, yes. And I think an important part of all of this is, and was alluded to also, but I wanted to kind of highlight it, which is the awareness, not only, awareness of, for example, the culture committee knowing what type of cultural research was being done on the reservation, but for all the departments and especially the council to know what kind of research is being done. If there was an important research project happening on the reservation and somebody has access to that information and questions you about it, it's something that you should have been made aware of and that you should know about, and you should know the process of it. I think, and it's been mentioned here already, but I think what's really important is for the tribe to determine what is appropriate research. Not only an awareness of all of it that's going on, but for other folks, I think the research questions, especially those that are designed for master's or doctoral theses and dissertations, it's oftentimes a question that the student comes up with that they're kind of curious about. What would really be really helpful and really interesting, and I think one of the real key benefits to this, and Jennifer, you alluded to that, was that we could, that they could contact this person and this office, the person responsible, the position we're talking about here. They could contact them and find out whatever area of study they're in, what are some of the interesting research questions that we as a tribe would have, that we want to further our knowledge, that we want to further our, that would help us with information. And then they could design their research question, not only to help finish their educational program, but they would also be giving real valuable information back to the tribe. And I think what we get back out of it is really a key component, because in all of it, that's part of the question that goes through, that goes to the researcher. Okay, so what is our benefit? It gets researchers thinking about what can I do that would further the tribe, that would further the tribe's interests, that would further the tribe's knowledge, that would further what they're interested in. To have researchers thinking that way instead of, oh, this is an interesting question that I would like to know for my own personal information, especially that's especially of a special interest to the cultural aspect, because we get research questions. Some tribes do not mind, for example, speaking about the deepest cultural or the deepest spiritual aspects, spiritual views that their tribe holds. Others have a different position about it, that have a different position. I was always raised with my grandparents to understand that those things that happen for you and those things that you do of a spiritual nature that are the most important, the closer that you hold them to just you, the more helpful it will be for what it is that you're asking for. And so that aspect of it is really, I think, really an important part. But overall, a lot of the research that is being done, for example, we have here with the tribe, we have research being done on pharmacogenetics out of the University of Montana. And I don't know how many of you are aware of the type of things that are being researched through that. Very helpful stuff for the tribe, and not only our tribe, but for other tribes. For example, there was a valuable research study that went through using our tribe that highlighted the effectiveness of cancer treating drugs based on your genetics, based on the ethnicity, and most tribal folks, would responded more or less appropriately to the different cancer treating drugs. So that was really important, that really important studies for us. But at the same time, the group that was doing that, and they did it appropriately. They approached CSKT, they asked for community members, they brought in community members, they developed a relationship with the community for years before they started to conduct the research. They established a relationship before even getting into all of it. That part was really important, and they were doing it the right way. Now, but even so, with them, they was telling me that once it was realized that they had this important data from CSKT, that other departments within their own institution, other folks would contact them and say, oh, I know you have this information. Geez, will you share your data with us so that, we would like to research this other question, and their response was, no, that's not an ethical thing to do. So when you look at all of the different aspects of it, it's really important for someone, for an office, to be a centralized part, for the tribe, for that, so that if any of you hear of anything, that you have a place to ask where it's known. This board would consist of all of the different parts of the tribe, the tribal organization, the different departments. And so we would all be aware of what types of research is going on in the other areas. And not only that, we would, I mean, a greater awareness of what is going on, especially in the field of research, is of critical importance for the tribe, and especially for our leadership to be on top of. So I just wanted to throw those tidbits in there, and thank you for the consideration today. And by the way, I think Chelsea and Nikki and Stacy have done a really good job with putting this group together and moving this forward. And I especially like the way the ordinance is coming about. So thank you.
Thank you, Vernon. Tony, I don't know if you have anything to add to it. I know that you've been dealing with special requests for a long time at the sailor shelters. So I don't know if you have anything, Tony.
Okay, did you guys bring your lunch?
I think we have an Instapot with something cooking in it.
This is going to take a while here. It's
Go ahead.
no, it's I guess again it's been said that these Chelsea and Stacy and Nikki and Tom, they've all done a great job, with this, putting it together. And that's always been a concern of mine ever since I started working for the culture committees a few years ago. And it's been a part of a concern, mainly because back then with the first traditional elders that I worked with, their concern with what was happening to their information and to their interviews that they had from scholars, universities, and whatever. So they had a concern, but at the same time, they want their information told. They want their stories told, but they wanted them told through themselves, as from the native people themselves, not from somebody else who has a tendency to change a lot of things to make things look good for them. As native people in this country, we in many ways we're all the same. We're all alike, but also in many ways we're different. We have differences in our how we look at things, how we handle things. So it's important to have these kinds of programs to kind of oversee, to kind of overlook the concerns of our tribal members. We've been poked, prodded, researched, turned over, studied, ever since the Europeans hit the East Shore. We've been looked at it in many different directions, different ways. We haven't changed over the 500 plus years, but they're still looking for those changes. Instead of asking the native people themselves, working with the native people themselves and different things, they made a lot of assumptions through their studies, through their snooping around. Talking about and researching the history of the very people that still exist, that are still here. But a lot of them still failed to go to them, to talk to them, to say, is this right? Instead, they were coming here and saying, you people did this. This is what you guys did. This is how you did it. And we're sitting there and say, really? That's something that we are taught from the day we are born. We're taught who we are, how we're raised, how important are not only the people, but our cultural resources, how important they are to us as Native people, because that's who we are. That's part of us. Over the years, people have taken bits and pieces of that and have created different things, which have changed a lot of the outlook of the people out there. For instance, in the early days, the Western movies had a big impact on how people looked at us as Native people. When John Wayne can use one bullet and kill 3, 4, 5 Indians at one time, that's pretty good. Those kinds of things, and that if you go back and look at some of those old movies, even the newer movies, Westerns, they fail to mention. They don't mention why the Native people did what they did. It always made the Native people look like bloodthirsty people, that they were out there just to kill. They don't mention the fact that the people were there protecting a way of life, protecting families, protecting resources, protecting everything by invaders. That very seldom was that mentioned, if at all. So people who looked at us as being bloodthirsty people. And so now today, we're trying to look at ways to avoid those, to try to correct those, to shed a different light on who we are as Native people, our cultural resources, our people resources, everything that's important to us as a people has to be handled correctly and told correctly to benefit the tribes, the people themselves, not anybody else. If they wanna question, they wanna research, then it should be the benefit of us here, says Kadesh people. The people that were here, the people that live here, the people that protected and used the resources that we have. And so over the years, as this progressed finally to where it's at now, I think a lot of the elders would feel very comfortable that someone is finally looking after their interests, their stories, protecting. A lot of people say, well, we want this, we want that. We ask them why. And then a lot of times they don't know why. They just, well, I'm doing this, I'm doing a paper, I'm doing this and that. But it never says anything. It never says it really pinpoints how it's going to benefit to us, so it's never how it's going to advance us as a tribe. Times have changed. People say, well, that's in the past. But our past is who we are. We don't change as a people. It's something, how we do things might change. How we accomplish things today might change, but who we are as a people never change. And so I think this is the key to having this in position, so that when somebody comes running into the offices and the council or to the SKC, and I'm doing this and I want this and I want to, where can I get this? Hold on there just a minute. Have you done the right process? Have you talked to the people? Have you done it? There's the stories have a lot of meaning to us as not to the people that as individual, but to us as a tribe. The artifacts, the resources, they all have special meaning. So I think with that, I think we could find ways to do that, find ways that'll help as Vernon said, advance our knowledge as Native people to benefit our future generations. Because we don't have people like Felicity McDonald, Louise McDonald, Christine Woodcock, Ines Pierre, Pete Beaverhead. We don't have them anymore. Alec Left Hand. I used to listen to Alec. He used to have Louis Kai. They all shared what they could. And that's what, kind of made us mesh as a people here. They don't understand that. People don't understand. And our young people need to start to understand how we, as individuals, as different tribes, as different communities, how we can come together and continue to build and make it strong for the next generation. So I think we're doing good, and I want to thank the crew again for the efforts. It's not easy. Anytime you have more than, I always say, every time you get more than one person, it's going to be an effort. It's going to be a challenge. And if you have someone like Nikki, it's really a challenge. But we've made it through this. And it's sometimes we thought about, locking Nikki in the closet so we can get some things done. But we are not. Yeah. No, I was just kidding. Thank you, Nikki. But
I'm not sure how to take that. I'm getting locked in a closet.
Whatever, everybody, we has a point, has a part in us as a people and our success. So, and now today, new leaders, new people. Tomorrow, we see them coming, the younger generations. So we're here to prepare for the next group of people. Them special.
I'm that, Tony. Just so the council members, when we first started this discussion, Brian Upton and Chelsea, that I did participate in some of those meetings, and I was one of those that advocated for combining all research into it, not just human research, and having a collective spot that would be. I always thought that this was something that benefited our people, how we could, like Jennifer said, and Vernon and Tony too, how we could be proactive, and how you could direct research to where we want it to go and where we have a need for research, and have a depository for everything, so we have it and have that information. So yeah, it's a great step forward, and we want to control that. If we don't, someone else will. And so the narrative we want to have in our pocket. I always thought that this was something that benefit all the departments. Thought maybe it was something that even could be funded under indirect. So it could be a consideration for Rick and company. Any other questions for Chelsea and staff? They've done a lot of great work from day one. It's really advanced. I want to congratulate you on that. It's really looking good.
Great. Well, thanks. And I just wanted to, Mike, I know Mike Dirklow's on. I don't know, Mike, if you have anything you wanted to add. This has been pretty comprehensive here, but you've been a key part of this the whole time. So.
Tony said everything I was going to say, and Vernon said everything I was going to say. So it's just about time. That's how I felt about it too, Tom. It's something that we've needed. Probably we should have had something like this 50 years ago or more, to protect some of our cultural knowledge and our knowledge, especially knowledge of sacred sites and sacred places, and the knowledge of our elders. So Lemlums, thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Oh, go ahead, Nick.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'd just like to add a couple comments to spin off of what has already, what Vernon shared, especially in regards to the pharmacogenetic studies, one of the things that I want to bring out with that is that Erica has been involved with the tribe for I'm pretty close to 15 years now. And, while the initial study with tamoxifen was with the cancer drug was the kickoff, that has changed into what our tribal health has asked of her. And so she's now looking at our vitamin D deficiency, as well as some medications that are used for heart conditions too. So that has turned around to be what we're asking of a researcher. That's a great example. The other thing I wanted to mention is data ownership. And I want to give a couple examples of that in that with Erica's study, of course, she has our blood samples, right? And she very much understands how valuable that is to us and what she's allowed to use that for. I don't believe other researchers see it the same way. And otherwise, why would they be asking for it? So having the ownership over those samples is a huge thing and something right that we need to make sure that we take full responsibility for. Additionally, another situation is where a researcher has since passed from the University of Montana. It was Dr. Gita Sweeney, and she had collected information years and years ago. And that information was interviews with our elders. And it's come to our attention that those interviews are still being utilized by the university, and people are given access to those surveys and that information that was collected. That information did not come back to us. I couldn't tell you what was collected exactly, but I feel like the review board could have put into place some authority that data comes back to the tribe, and the tribe gives permission to who gets access to that data hereforth. So those are some situations I think that are really pertinent to what is real today and some of the struggles that we're having. And lastly, I want to say that we're asking for one position, and I can't imagine who would take this position as being a one-man show. I think it would be very difficult to do it as a one-person thing, but this is a starting point. I imagine that if this is going to be a repository, there's going to be IT folks involved, all kinds of people to make sure that that information is stored safely and such. But this would be a task for one person. And ultimately, I think on a personal level, my ultimate goal, even if I'm a little bit of a pain in the tail to Tony here or there, is that the research is with us and for us and not on us. And this is the way we need to move forward in accomplishing that.
Thank you, Nikki.
And Nikki, interesting hearing you make those comments, because actually I had you in mind for that position.
Well, who knows? I don't know where life turns, but this is something I've come to learn is super important and very difficult if you don't have backing and you don't have authorities to kind of keep people in line. So it's been quite frustrating, and there's been multiple times where I've been approached with research ideas and people who, really they want to come in and steal the information and go publish, and it's wrong. And it's something it's frustrating. It can get my skin warm.
If I may, Mr. Chair, it's like, I'm sorry, Nikki, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there, but it's like the group that was just before us. You could see the enthusiasm, you could see the commitment to what they were doing, you could see the excitement for what they wanted to do, and you could see how much of a response came from the students and how much of a response came from those that they were educating on it. To include Morningstar, to include the youth, to make it available for other tribes as well. That type of interest and motivation was really critical, and that's the type of person that we would need. Someone who has that kind of a passion in order to make sure that all of the pieces of this come together and stay together. So thank you.
Thank you, Vernon. I guess Chelsea, this has been a great update. I guess where do we go from here?
Well, I think, I think what we're sort of asking from you, Council, is whether you want us to, I guess, move forward and work with Rick. And if there's anyone else on, I think this sounds great, but I don't think there's any way we're gonna do this without someone whose job it is to do this. So I guess we're looking for approval to work with Rick on figuring out the next steps of what would it take to hire someone, or at least to continue those discussions. Otherwise, I think we've gone as a group as far as we have a few minor things to fix for the ordinance, but the whole next step, I think, would involve someone sort of leading this effort. I don't think any of us on the working group feel like we have the capacity to kind of to do that. I mean,
I
we'll
guess
still help, but
the one in those initial few meetings we had, Chelsea, that I was participating with, I couldn't recall whether or not there was an opportunity to seek funding assistance for this type of a position from the proponents of research. Research is kind of big business in universities, and so if there was a administrative fee we could collect, if there was a research proposal submitted just for our time to consider it, and then maybe the additional cost if they were awarded the privilege to continue on with their study.
yeah, yes, and Mr. Chair, I think we've had some discussions about this, and we do have a section in the ordinance that we've included called, it's on section 8, permit fees. And I think, and Nikki and Stacy, well, especially Nikki can probably talk to this better than I can, but right, some of these research projects have huge, have a lot of funding that comes with it. And it does seem entirely appropriate that for some of these really large projects, that some of that funding would come to the tribes. And I think we decided at this point that it would need to be considered on a case-by-case basis, but certainly that at least some funding would come from there. And Nikki, do you, or even Stacy, want to weigh in a little bit more on that, or have further thoughts on that?
Yeah, you totally covered it. Just to give a little background in regards to IRB, there are some IRBs that actually charge a fee if an IRB application is submitted, but that would be something that would support SKC, as all the IRB members are not paid. It's duties as assigned. But as a review, that's something that we can choose. I think it's really difficult to say, well, here's the amount of that. Currently I'm working on a grant that was $23 million that landed at MSU, and I don't know how much landed on our reservation, but I think we had 8 different researchers here. So I don't know how we make some sort of equation for that amount or what that could look like, but I definitely feel like we should put something in place and allow for that opportunity.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Is council consensus to proceed? Keep working down this path? It looks like you have council consensus to continue. Great.
Well, that's great news. As you've heard from everyone, we all think this is a really important thing to do. And likely another area where CSKT will be, a sort of a leader among tribes. So we'll carry on and work with Rick and this group to keep moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea, Nikki, Stacy, and the whole crew. Really great work. So appreciate it.
All right. Well, we'll let you get off a little early, maybe, for lunch.
Well, thank you. I think we have a Dixon planning session going on here at lunch, so we'll take the extra time that we can get. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will reschedule Mission Valley Power orientation for, I think, next Thursday. So thank you, John, for rescheduling for us. So we'll take a break for lunch.
All right, Lem's open.
Lemlips.
Oh, just for clarification, then this position has by consensus it's been approved to move forward with and work with Rick with locating the funding and et cetera, and then move forward with this the research review board.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Vernon.
Carol? Okay, let's move it.